Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Recently, I found a new library called Celery. As the documentation suggests, it's just a simple distributed task queue. If you don't know what it is, let me explain it to you now. So as an example here, let's take a little situation. Let's say that you have a server that's inserting huge amounts of data or doing something that's really process intensive in the background. So let's say, for example, if we're doing a post request which is inserting data, the user will be met by waiting screen. This will make our application feel slower. So what do we do here? Well, this is where Celery comes in. So what Celery does is it will create a new process, and in that process, it will create a queue system, and within that queue system, all of your tasks, or in our case, our insert tasks will be placed on that queue. This is all done asynchronously. So this means that the user does not have to wait for their process to complete. So now, thanks to Celery, you can then notify the user that their insert request or their post request is in queue. As a result, this would make your application feel faster. I'll now briefly discuss what kind of application we'll be building in this video. So in this video, we'll be building a simple Django REST framework API, and in the backend or as a queue system, we'll be using Celery. Furthermore, later on in this video, we'll also be using Docker Compose so that you can distribute your API via Docker. So let's get started. So here I am in VS Code. So first what I will do is I will create an environment. So Python create environment. Here my choice is Conda, and I'll use the latest version of Python that's available. And now we wait. And then to activate my environment, I'll go conda activate.conda/. Okay, now it's been activated. So what I'll do here is first I'll install Django REST framework like so. So pip install Django REST framework. And now it's installed, and then I'll go Django-admin. I just want to see if my command works, and it works. So Django-admin start project. So I want to create a project. Let's call it Celery tutorial. Okay, it's not a valid project name. I'll make another one that just do Celery tutorial, and then I'll navigate into Celery tutorial. So here, as you can see, I have a manage.py file. So I'll use this manage.py file to build an application. So Python manage.py start app, and let's call our application as API. Okay, so as you can see, my folder has now been built. I won't really get into the specifics of Django REST framework. If you want to know more about Django REST framework, I'll link a video in the description. But anyways, let's create a small URL. So what I'll do here within API, I'll create a new file. Let's call it urls.py. And then I will have to go into the settings.py file. So Celery tutorial settings.py. Let me shrink this. Let me scroll down. So within installed apps, I will have to go REST framework, and then the name of my API as well. In this case, it's just API. So anyways, let's try creating a view. So I'll go to views.py, and let's create an API view. So API view, and then get. Then let's create def index request, and basically, yeah, thanks to GitHub Copilot, we have code complete. Let me now fix my imports. So from REST framework decorators, I import API view, and then from response, I import response. Now what I have to do is I have to link this view to my URL. So I'll go to urls.py. So from django.urls import path. Then from my current directory, I import views. Then I do a URL patterns. So I want to create my URL pattern. It should be an array and then path. So the index should be views.index. That's it. And then what I'll do is I'll go to URLs within my Celery tutorial project folder. I'll go down here and then go path again. It should be index include api.urls. Now I need to use my imports here. So include it like so. And then let's test it out. So what I'll do here, I go Python manage.py. To run my server, I go run server. We have an error here. Let's fix it later on. Anyways, I'll go to my API client. Let's do a get request. Cool, as you can see, it works. Let's now create a small model for this demo. So I'll go to models.py. Here I'll create a simple model. So let's call it item. So I want to create an item model, models.model, and then I just want to have one field within my item model. So name models dot char field, so it should be a string. Let's set the max length to 100, and then I would want my meta like so. Let's keep the ordering to name. That's it. Again, if you don't know how to build a Django REST framework project, I'll link my video in the description. So now what I'll need to do is I need to fix my error here by doing the migrate command. So within another terminal, I go conda activate. Basically, I want to activate my environment. Then I go into my Django directory. Sorry, it's a Celery directory. Then here python manage.py make migrations. So I want to update my database with my new model. And then python manage.py migrate. Okay, now it seems to be done. Again, I would need to create a little serializer. So API, I create a new file. Let's call it serializers.py. So here, what I have to do is I have to create my item serializer. So class item serializer, serializers dot model serializer, class meta. My model should be my item, and my fields should be the ID and the name. So now I have to fix my import. So from REST framework, import serializers from my current directory, which is dot. So I have to import models here, import item. That's it. Okay, now with my serializer built, I'll go to views.py, and then here I'll change my function so I can get all of my items. So what I'll do here, I'll create items, item.objects.all, and then my serializer, so that when I have all of my objects, I can simply pass in to my serializer like so. So items, and they can be multiple items. And instead of response, I return a JSON response. So let me shrink it like so, give myself some space. From django.http, I import JSON response, and I copy it like so. And let me fix my imports once again. So from .models, I import item. From .serializers, I import item serializer. That's it. Let's now test it out. So I go to my API client. If I do a get, I should expect an empty array. Whoops, so I didn't change some code. Let me go back. So instead of returning this message, I'll do serializer.data safe as false. That's it. Let's now test it out once again. Now as you can see, I have an empty array. So now let's go back to views.py. So I want to create another function that would help me insert data into my database. So this time it should be a post request. So post def insert data request. So data should be JSON parser dot parse request. And then I should have my serializer to validate this data. So serializer item serializer data should be just data. And then I want to check if it's valid like so. So serializer.is valid. If it is valid, I want to save it to my database. And then in the end, I just return a response. I return a JSON response, serializer.data and status as 201. Otherwise, if it's not valid, I do return response, serializer.errors and error 400. That's it. Let me now fix my imports. So JSON parser, let me scroll up. So from REST framework.parsers, I import JSON parser, and from REST framework.response, I import response. That's it. Let's now test it out. So I create a post request, and within my body, I'll go hello1, and let's send it. Okay, I have an error here. This is because I've done a little mistake. So I go back to urls.py and I create another path, views.insert data. And then let's test it out once again. Okay, so it seems I've done something wrong. So what I'll do is I'll go to views.py, I'll change it to post. I'll add a post string to my array here. And what I can do is I can check if my request is a post request here. So request.method, if it's post, if it is post, I can simply just copy all of this code, paste it here. Let me now fix my indentation here like so. If serializer valid, then it seems to be done just fine. Let me double check. Here I've messed it up once again. And yeah, let me now remove all of this here. And going back to urls.py, I will remove this. So far, it seems fine to me. Let's test it out once again. Okay, so as you can see, as soon as I perform the push request, my data seems to now have been added to my database. Let's do a GET request and see if it's there. Cool, as you can see, our code works. Okay, let's move on to the next step, which is to integrate Celery into my project. Okay, in the Celery documentation, they have written a few instructions on how you can integrate Celery with Django. So first what I have to do is, let me just close the server. I'll do pip install Celery, and I'll also do a pip install of Redis. So Redis is our in-memory database. This is where all of our tasks will be held, and then I just install. In the meanwhile, what I'll do is within celery.py, so with my project celery.py, I'll just copy all of this code like so. Going here, so within my project, I'll create a new file called celery.py. I'll paste it like so. Going back within my init.py, I'll copy this. So init.py, I copy. And there are still a few setup steps remaining. So within celery.py, it's not proj.settings, it's celery tutorial.settings. So celery tutorial, and again, celery tutorial. Okay, that seems to be it. So let's try running Celery. What I'll do is I'll clear this like so, and then to run Celery, let me check if I have Celery command. Okay, so I do have the Celery command. So celery-a, and then the name of my Celery application. In this case, it's just called Celery tutorial. And I want to use a Celery worker. So just a worker -l, and this is the level of logging. So I'll just set it to info. Okay, so now it seems to be running. Notice that I have a few errors. We will just fix it shortly. Let me just close it. So according to the error, if we look carefully, it cannot connect to a service. This service is what Celery calls as a broker. This is where all of your tasks will live. So let's go to settings.py. Here what I'll do is on the top around here, let's create a variable called Celery broker URL. And as stated earlier, we're gonna use Redis. So Redis or Redis / localhost 6379. Okay, so then what I will do here, I will create a Docker compose file where I'll be running my Redis service. So here, new file, docker-compose.yml, and I'll do services. So as my first service, of course, is going to be Redis. And then for my image, I'll just use Redis, and I would have to expose the ports as well. So my host port is going to be 6379. As stated earlier, and the port within the container is going to be also 6379. Then I'll create another service. I'll call it Redis Commander. So this is where you can view all of the tasks within the Redis database. So image Redis Commander / Redis Commander latest. And then it accepts an environment variable, Redis hosts, and it's going to be local, and the name of my container, which is Redis, and the port 6379. So of course I would need its ports as well. So ports is going to be 8081 as 8081, and it depends on the Redis service. So of course, if Redis cannot run, it makes no sense for the Redis Commander service to run as well. Okay, that's it. So now what I'll do within my command line, I'll create another terminal instance, docker compose up. Okay, so I have an error here. I'll just convert it to a string. And I think I should do the same here as well. Let me remove the spaces. Scrolling down, let me remove the spaces here as well. And let's do it again. Okay, so I have an error again. Let's double check. Okay, I found the error. I just had to remove this extra slash. That's it. Now let me try running it again. Okay, so as you can see, my services are now running. So I'll go back to my terminal instance where I was running Celery. Hopefully this now works just fine. So let me clear it. And again, I run my Celery instance. Okay, so as you can see, it's now connected. Great. Let's now move on. So what I'll do here, I'll now create a simple task for Celery. So within API, I create a new file called tasks.py. So this is where all of my tasks would live. So I do from Celery import shared task. And I'm going to use a shared task decorator. This will tell Celery that my function will be a task that it can use. So let's call it insert into database like so. And what I'm going to do here, just to simulate a long running process, I'll just do time.sleep. So just block the thread for 10 seconds. So import time and then my serializer. So from serializers, import serializers, item serializer, sorry. So what I want to do is I want to insert the upcoming data into my database. So item serializer, the data will be the data. Looks like it needs to be a parameter. So data. Again, I'll just go to views.py and then copy all of this code like so. So I don't need to parse it. I just need to copy all of this. Going back to task.py. Now let me fix my indentation. And then what I'll do is I'll return the data. That's it. And then let's go back to views.py. So what I want to do is I want to invoke this function. So from .tasks, I import insert into db, and let me remove all of this code. And then here I'm going to replace it with insert into db as data. Next, what I want to do is I just want to return a response. Let's do a message. Item creation task has been added to the queue. Let me fix my import. So this should be a string. Let's just return a JSON response instead. Okay, so far so good. Let's now test it out. So first what I would need to do is I would need to run my server. First let me activate my environment, and then cd celery tutorial python manage.py run server. Okay, now it's running. Now let's test it out. I'll do a push request. Within my body I'll do hello 2, and let's see if Celery does its magic. So I send. So as you can see, it's processing, or it was processing just now. So what happened? According to my code, it should have added my task to the queue. Well, there's still one extra step. So I'll go back to views.py, and instead of just insert into db, I had to do insert into db.delay. That's it. Let's now test it out once again. So I'll do a push request of hello 3, and hopefully enough, this response should be instant. Cool. As you can see, it was basically instant. Let me do hello 4. Send again. So it was basically instant. Okay, now that everything has been done, let's now try to find my Celery process. Okay, so here as you can see, I have an error. It's because I forgot to restart the Celery process. So let me close it again, or let me close it and then let me start it up again, and hopefully this time it should now work properly. So let me do a get request. Let's see how many items there are. Okay, only 2 items. That's because Celery failed before. So let's do hello 3 post. So now let me extend my window. Notice that Celery has now taken over that task, and it has a little ID attached to it. And a few seconds later, or 10 seconds later, my task, my insert into db task with the same ID has succeeded. Let's try adding more items. So I'll do hello 4 and then hello 5. So as you can see, it added to the queue once more. So it has been received, and let's wait for a bit. Celery has successfully inserted items into my database. Okay, so in the browser, let's try to view our tasks using Redis Commander. So recall, according to our Docker Compose file, Redis Commander was running on 8081. So I'll go to port 8081 like so, and let me refresh. Okay, so I seem to have made an error here. So the error was that I did not set Redis as my backend. So I'll go back to VS Code. Let's go to settings.py and Celery result backend, and basically I just copy this code, and then I have to restart my Celery service once again. Okay, so if I scroll up, notice that my results, according to my config, all of my results will now be saved within my Redis database. So going back to my API client, I shrink this, and then let's do hello 6. Whoops, looks like I did not run my server. There was an error, so I just run my server again. Okay, so now let's do send, and then hello 7 once more. Let's go back to Redis Commander. Let me refresh. Okay, so a while later, looks like my commands have been succeeded. Going back to Redis Commander, as you can see, my tasks have been successfully added to my Redis database. Okay, so part 2 for me is to put my Celery service and my API within my Docker Compose file. So what we'll do here, it will scroll down to Docker Compose.yml. And what I'll do here, let me just shrink this like so. And I want to create 2 services. One service will be for my Celery worker, and one service will actually be for my API. So now let's get started. So we go worker, so my worker service, and then we want to build it from the current Docker Compose file. Sorry, we want to build it with the current Dockerfile, which we'll build in a minute, and then the command. So recall, the command to run my Celery service is celery-a, and then the name of my project. So Django, it's not Django, it's Celery tutorial, and then my worker, and then -l for my logging info. Then I create another service for my API, let's call it web. Again, it has to be built from the current Dockerfile, and then my command. So for my command, what I'll do is sh-c, and then the command to run this API. So I'll do python manage.py migrate. So I want to sync my database, and then I also want to run the server. So I'll go python manage.py run server, and then here I'll do my IP address as well. I'm doing this because I had some trouble running my API through Docker. So I have to pass in my API. So 0.0.0.0 and then my port, which is 8000. So moving on, let's get the ports as well. So my ports are going to be 8000 by 8000. And what I'm going to do here, in my experience, I was not really able to work with my SQLite file. So I'll create another database for my Docker Compose. I'll create a PostgreSQL database. So PGSQL, let's create a PGSQL container. For my image, I'll use Postgres latest, and then my environment variables. So my database name should be DjangoDB. My username, so it's passed by Postgres user, should be Django user dash Postgres password. Let's call it secure password. Now let's move on to create my volumes. So volumes, let's name it as pg data, and within the container it's going to be var/lib/postgresql/data. So of course I'm going to need the ports as well. Maybe I'm not sure, but let's pass it in anyway. I'm not sure if my web service is going to need exposed ports, but let's just leave it there to be safe. Then what I'll do for my next step is I will pass in a health check. My intention is I want my PostgreSQL service to start up, and then when it's healthy, I can then make my web service run. So for example, let's say your PostgreSQL service is not running or has not started yet, it would make no sense for my web service to run. So within my health check, I do cmd /shell. PG is ready, so I want to check if my database is ready with my user. So let's call it Django user, and my password. Sorry, not my password, the name of my database, DjangoDB. Let's set the interval to 5 seconds. Let's set the timeout to 5 seconds as well. 5 retries seems fine. And for my start period, I'll just do 10 seconds. Okay, now let's move on to creating the Dockerfile for my services. So new file, Dockerfile. So for my Dockerfile, I'll do from. So my base image is going to be Python 3.13 or 3.12. Let me double check what version of Python I'm using. Okay, so I was using Python version 3.12 -alpine, and then my work directory is going to be /app. And then what I'll do is I'll copy over everything within this directory. So copy dash or dot and dot. And then in the end, I'll install my dependencies. So run pip install, and then my dependencies. So I remember installing Django REST framework, Redis, Celery, and since I'm interacting with my PostgreSQL database, I would need to install scopg binary. Let's now run it. So here I'm going to go docker compose up. Oops, there seems to be an error. It's because I did not name my volume. So I'll go back to docker compose and then scroll all the way down. Volumes as pg data. Let's run it again. Docker compose up. There's an error again. Let me press enter and then give it some indentation. So this will name my Docker volume. Let's run it again. Hopefully this works this time. And let's wait. Okay, so looking at the logs, looks like I made a little mistake here. My directory for the Docker Compose and the Dockerfile are wrong. So I'll close it. And what I can do is I can collapse this folder and then put it within the Celery tutorial folder. And I'll do the same for my Dockerfile. I'm doing this because I recall earlier my worker or my web service could not find the manage.py file. So now hopefully they should be able to find my manage.py file. Let me clear it up. So cd Celery tutorial docker compose up. Okay, so according to the logs, looks like I made yet another error. I'm very sorry for that. I need to fix my host name for my Redis database. So this time it's not going to be localhost. Since they're on the same Docker network, I would need to specify my Redis container name instead. So I'll copy this like so and then go to settings, Redis here as well. And going back to Docker Compose, one more thing I forgot. Within my web service, I have to do depends on, and the name of my service is gonna be PostgreSQL. And more specifically, I would need to check if they're healthy. So my condition, service, healthy. Let's now close it and run it again. There should not be a dash. Let me fix my indentation. docker compose up dash dash build to build my container from scratch. Okay, so this time it now seems to be working fine. As you can see, according to the logs, my Celery instance is working and the same thing. So my web instance also seems to be working just fine. Let's now test it out. So I'll go back to my API client. So testing it out within my API client, I'll do a send for my post request and let's see. Nice. As you can see, I now have a success message. But recall earlier, I explained that for some reason, I'm not sure why, but within Docker Compose, I cannot save items to a database. So for that reason, I'll move on to using PostgreSQL instead. So in Docker Compose, we already built a PostgreSQL container. So I go to settings.py to link my PostgreSQL container with my API. So let's scroll down. So within databases, I'll comment all of this. So this time my engine is going to be PostgreSQL. So let me just copy this. So instead of SQLite 3, it's going to be PostgreSQL. My name. So the name of my database, according to Docker Compose, is going to be DjangoDB. My username, let's go back, Django user. My password is secure password. And then my host. So since I'm running it in Docker Compose, it's going to be the name of my container, which is PGSQL. And then my port, which is in this case 5432. Let me fix my code here. So it needs a comma. So I'll extend the terminal or I'll make it bigger. Let me close it. I would need to build my Docker image once again. So I do Docker compose up dash dash build. Okay, now with the container running, as you can see, my migrations have been done and my API is running as well. Let's go to my post or my API client. And this time, hopefully, fingers crossed, I should expect new items come up within my database. So I send, okay, add it to the queue. And according to the logs, my worker is now running as well. So hopefully 10 seconds later, I expect my item to come up. Okay, so it succeeded. Let's do a get. Nice. Let's add another one. Let's do hello 9. Send once again. Logs, according to logs, a request has been received. Let's do a get. So it hasn't come up yet. Let's wait for a bit. Okay, so now it succeeded. Get once again. Nice. As you can see, our code works. So within the documentation, I also found this certain extension called Django Celery results. So far, we've been using Redis to save our tasks. Celery also allows you to save your tasks within your main database. So let's do so now. So what I'll do is I'll go back to Dockerfile. And here what we need to do is we have to install this dependency. So Django Celery results, I'll paste it like so. Then going back to settings.py file, I would need to go to install apps. Here I would need to include my Django Celery results string. And then in the end, within my Docker Compose file, I would also need to specify my migration. So I'll copy this as well. Go to Docker Compose. We're already doing a migration, but to be safe, let's add another command to migrate the Django Celery results table. Looks like I need to fix my code. And then step 4 is to set the result backend to DjangoDB. So I go to settings.py, scrolling up, we set the result backend to Redis. Let's just set it to DjangoDB. So I couldn't get the cache working while working on this tutorial, so I won't do it today. Okay, so with the result backend set, let's now create another endpoint where I can actually see my tasks within the database. So I'll go to API views.py. Let's create another API view. So API view get. Let's call this function view tasks request. Actually, we don't need request. So in this function, what I want to do is I want to get my tasks. But here I'm a bit confused. What will the name of my table be? So here, according to the documentation, I found out that the table name is task result. So let's go back to VS Code. Let's import it from Django Celery results. Looks like I forgot to install the pip module. So pip install Django Celery results. It doesn't really matter because we're already installing it within the Dockerfile. Import task result. It's actually Django Celery results dot models. Scrolling down, let's do task result dot objects dot get. Should be all actually. I want to get all my tasks and then return a JSON response. Let's do tasks and then pass in my tasks. I'll do it as a list task dot values. That's it. Now let's go to urls.py, comma path and then slash tasks, comma views dot view tasks. Let's now rebuild the Docker container. So Docker compose up dash dash build. Okay, so with my API client running, I'll do a push request. Let's do hello 10. and let's send it. So now it's in the queue, and let's do a get request. Let's wait for a bit. Let's send it again. Hello 10 is there. Let's do a get request of the tasks so I can see my tasks. Whoops, so there seems to be an error. To fix my error, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the slash since I remember getting an error there. And here I have another problem. So I'll go back to views.py, then I'll specify request as well. This is something related to arguments. Let's close the server and then build the image once again. Docker compose up -- build. Okay, so with my server running, I did a get request to my tasks endpoint, and there's already seems to be a task that was saved within my database, which was the hello 10 item that we pushed earlier. Let's do hello 11, remove this, and let's do a post again. Okay, and let's do a get. So hello 11 is not there yet, it's in the queue, and let's do a get request of tasks. Nice. So as you can see, a second item has been added. Let's do a get request of the base. So I want to get my items, and now hello 11 is successfully there. So in this video, you guys learned about the basics of Celery, and you guys also learned how to integrate Celery within your Django project. Furthermore, you also learned how to integrate Celery and your API within a Docker Compose file. That's it for today. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section. Till then, bye bye.